Hey, everybody. Welcome to Written and Watched. This week, we're on the watched side of things. We watched The Iron Giant, and with me again is Briar. Briar, you want to say hi to the people and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
In case
Hello,
they
everyone.
missed the first one. I don't know. If you're only listening to this one, that's fine.
It's been like 3 years since they listened to the written part, and now it's on to the watched. But yeah, if you forgot me, my name is Briar. I am a fantasy and science fiction author with a, dribblings of comedy here and there. I got a debut novel coming out called Gambling on Common Sense. That's coming out for the Kickstarter's coming out on the 10th of this month, of October 2024. And right here next to me, this is Pepper Potts. She is my biggest critic and mostly has to do with not providing her enough kibble and bits. What's up, dog?
Is Pepper Potts from Iron Man?
Yeah, okay. Totally.
Because there was a children's book series where they lived in a boxcar, and the Boxcar Children. I believe their last name was Potts, but I'm not 100% on that. It could just be a misnumber, like the Potts Children feels like something.
I have the vaguest recollection of what you're talking about. I could not tell you any of those characters' names.
I couldn't do it now if my life depended on it. That would not be my bet for hey, do this or you die. I'm like, no, I want to sing the happy birthday song. This is baloney. Okay. So since we last talked to y'all, we've watched The Iron Giant, which was a rewatch for both of us. And the reason that Briar brought this book to us in the first place. So I'm going to give it to you first because I have feelings all over the place for this movie. So Briar, why don't you open us up with first take, overall take, vibe set for The Iron Giant film?
Sure. So it is just as good as I remembered. There's some movies that stay with you and you have these scenes in your head. And I would replay those scenes occasionally, like them jumping in the lake and just splashing in. And of course, the ending, which I'm going to wait till we get to it.
Gutting.
Every time.
Gutting.
Super bad.
So this movie is a phenomenal turn from the text of the book. So where the text is kind of in that weird fantasy space, this is a very grounded, more realistic kind of take on the story. I looked back and I looked at some stuff. So just to kind of put this in a space and time for everybody, The Iron Giant came out in 1999. It was a Warner Brothers feature animation. It was based on the novel, obviously original. The voice cast is phenomenal, but let's talk about the key person in getting this made, and that's Brad Bird. So Brad Bird, do you know much about Brad Bird?
No. Please enlighten me.
Everybody that's listening is going to know Brad Bird because he wrote and directed The Incredibles. And he did a whole bunch of other Pixar movies. Yes. So Brad is the first non-Pixar employee. Pixar started and they were doing stuff. And after they did Toy Story, they signed a contract with Brad Bird to come over and do a 3-picture deal. And so Brad Bird's origin and genesis cannot be divorced from this film. And it's phenomenal how much of this story is Brad Bird's story as much as it's the Iron Giant story. The point I'll make there is that and this is something I got when I was reading between, because I knew Brad Bird did this. I didn't know that the book parts, and I didn't know about Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Apparently, the original book was written to help his children deal with the death of Sylvia Plath. Really? And so it was a coping book for his kids. She committed suicide. Ted Hughes was having affairs all over the place, and one of the women he was having affairs with committed suicide as well. So this guy's a mess anyway. But he did make this. Hold on, you probably hear my pup in the back. No? Yes? Yeah. She's very excited about somebody outside, but I don't see anyone. We'll assume the house is safe. I watched a little bit much true crime, so Dennis Bowman could be sneaking around the back. I don't know.
Oh no! It's just Ted Hughes in a ski mask. Come back! How dare you talk from me?
We're in Vegas, so it very likely could be methamphetamine.
Oh God!
We're near a park that occasionally has a strange number of not dangerous but odd homeless people that occasionally transit it, and so they have the yelling variety, the sleeping in this truck variety. And this looks like it was somebody that just stopped from my house in a red car. So maybe Amazon. Don't know. Back to Brad Bird. So Brad Bird, he graduated from, I believe, Cal Arts. One of his peers in school was Tim Burton. He left there and he went and worked at Disney. He was one of the last people to be tutored by the 9 Old Men, which is like the best Disney animators that have ever lived. Right. So this guy's got chops. He's got teeth for days on just basic skills. He got linked up with Spielberg and did some stuff writing for Spielberg for some stuff that he made. He wrote and directed for The Simpsons. This guy's pedigree before he hits Iron Giant is phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
He wrote The Incredibles before he wrote The Iron Giant. So he had written The Incredibles and shopped it around in like 92 and nobody bit. And then he got an offer to come over and do some stuff at Warner Brothers. And he came over and was doing that. And there were studio mergers. So all of a sudden this motion picture, The Iron Giant, was originally supposed to be a musical, and it was going to be done by Don Bluth. Rockadoodle. All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Kidding.
That Don Bluth. Yes, I can't imagine this as Iron Giant, the cartoon musical.
God, I would love to see like the original concepts for what songs.
Right? Right?
Oh my God.
There's even a period of time where Tim Burton had like a leg on this, right? So they hand him the Iron Giant and they're like, this is end of your contract. We're picking it up, but you've got to do this. And then this is your last film. You've got 2 years instead of the normal 4 or 5. So he did everything in half the time and with half the money on the Iron Giant. And he came in and he rewrote the entire script with another guy. And so Iron Giant is very, very, very much his. And
That's
then
so cool.
after that, he goes on, he makes, he joins the Pixar. He does all that. He did Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Like he's a dude who's out there now. It's crazy. So that said, they do change the movie quite a bit from the book, and they ground it really in Cold War. And Brad Bird's pitch for this was always, what if you were a gun but didn't want to be a gun? Like that's his whole floor for it. And he came into this after his sister had been shot in a domestic assault situation. So that kind of gives you like, it's so heady. Like it changes the whole thing for me because I'd seen it before, but I didn't know all this stuff.
No, that adds so many layers of complexity, right? And just like very personal take from there.
Right.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So, so all that to say, the guy making it is phenomenal. He's gone on to do a bunch of other phenomenal things. And this is kind of his real opener. He's done some stuff before this, but this is really Brad Bird showing up. And unfortunately, the budget was like, I think like 30 to 50 million. And then it made like half of that back at the box office. So it's considered a failure. But it has huge legs. Like when it came out on VHS and DVD, it got this cult status. So the story of the film itself is fascinating. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that it did so poorly, Warner Brothers didn't spend much money on it because they were promoting Wild Wild West that year.
Yeah, I remember that
Wild
one.
West is a thing.
It's a classic. It's a pinnacle of American media and culture.
I give Wild Wild West huge credit for being the punchline to one of the best Kevin Smith anecdotes ever. Kevin Smith was hired to do a Superman spec script, but he was doing it with a guy named John Peters, I believe it is. Hold on, I'm going to look on the internet to verify the dude's name. John Peters. Are you a producer? Yeah. Yep. Film producer and former hairdresser. He was like Bette Midler's. I'm serious. He was Bette Midler's hair guy.
Resume, just like really proud.
It's the two things. John Peters is an American film producer and former hairdresser. That's his first line on Wikipedia. He was Bette Midler's. Yeah, it's so crazy. But he sat there and Kevin Smith was pitching the script to him, and he kept going, okay, but we got to put a giant spider in it. We got to put a giant spider in it. We got to put a giant spider in it. Kevin Smith's like, why? I don't understand. I highly recommend. You're listening to this, go watch Kevin Smith talk about John Peters. But in the end, it's they end up not making the movie. Kevin Smith goes to see Wild Wild West, which was John Peters' next film. Giant mechanical spider. so that
fixated.
And it's so crazy, like the web of things that came together around this movie, the movie coming out. And so it's a box office failure, but it has this cult status. Tons of people recommend it. I think it's been like 10 or 15 years ago, they released a signature edition, which has like 2 extra scenes. It adds like 5 minutes to the film. But then
I wonder if
I hadn't seen it before. I found it and I watched it. And the 2 scenes, we'll talk about them later.
Okay.
One of them's a throwaway, but one of them actually is super interesting. More stuff about the film that's important to know. The score is great. Like it feels so good. And I think you forget when you watch it and you're younger, you kind of forget. The music just fades into the background.
It blends so perfectly.
Yeah.
Like you never are taken out of the movie by the music.
Yeah.
And I think that can happen sometimes, and that's when they don't mesh well. But that, I think it complements it well, because I never had a moment where I was like, oh, what are they doing with this?
So we talked about Brad Bird's pedigree a little bit. Do you know who did the music for this?
No.
Do you know who Michael Kamen is?
No, I don't.
It's fine if you don't. It's one of those things where I looked him up because of this. He worked with Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, Queen, Eric Clapton, Roger Daltrey, Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Tom Petty, David Bowie, Brian Ferry, The Eurythmics, Queensryche, Rush, Metallica, Def Leppard, Herbie Hancock, Tim Curry, The Cranberries, Bryan Adams, Jim Croce, Guns N' Roses, and Kate Bush.
Okay, so kind of an amateur, really.
He did. He worked with Bryan Adams on Everything I Do It For You, All the Love for Three Musketeers. And then for film and television, he did the score for The Dead Zone, Queen and Country, Polyester, Brazil, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, The Three Musketeers, Highlander, X-Men, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Lethal Weapon series, all of them. The first 3 Die Hards, Frequency, and many others. He scored From the Earth to the Moon and the Band of Brothers series on HBO. He also did trailer music for B-Movie, Wall-E, and Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Like, the guy has chops. And so
I don't know. I think he needs a little more time, just a little more experience on that resume before you can hire him.
He died at 55.
In this economy.
He died at 55. He did all that before 55.
Good Lord.
Right?
Well,
yeah.
Shit.
So all I'm saying is, if you haven't seen this movie, when you watch it, listen to the music. It opened up, I'm watching, I'm like, it's so good. Who is this? And I look up and I go, holy crap, this is a dude. This is a dude who's on it. Yeah. So there's that. And then
no critics.
And then the last thing to add about the pedigree of this freaking film. Do you know who the voice of the Iron Giant is?
No.
Vin Diesel.
Oh, that tracks.
I Am Groot, bud.
Yeah, I Am Groot.
And then it has Harry Connick Jr., Jennifer Aniston, Cloris Leachman, with anybody who watches like Young Frankenstein and stuff. She's been around forever. The guy that plays Kent Mansley is Christopher McDonald, who's Shooter McGavin from the Happy Gilmore movies.
Okay, that tracks. That tracks.
Right?
Perfect.
Right down the middle. John Mahoney is the general. That's Frasier's dad from Frasier. And then there's a whole bunch of others that are in here. And it's just, if you look at the list, it's ridiculous. So this movie punches way above its weight for something that came in half budget, half the time. Mm-hmm. Holy crap. They got a cast. They got a hell of a script. They got musicians. Like, it's just crazy what is in this for a budget animated film.
And it's It is a cult classic in my mind. Like, this is something that I go back to and want to go back to and want to see again. And it's something I will always like look favorably upon. So it's amazing that that cast came together for this. And gosh, I never knew about the musician. That's really cool.
It's crazy. I'm really interested to go listen to his other compositions and see like how they feel and if they feel the same kind of way.
All of Lethal Weapon. I think that's where this is going.
Giving Mel Gibson more money.
Watch.
All right. I guess we can give him a little bit more money. And to the point about Brad Bird. So I looked up some interviews and he was talking about this film and where it sits in him and where it sits for his life. He was, of course, gutted that it didn't do well at the box office because he thinks it's great. But in the years since then, everybody that comes up and tells them that he watches it, he's made a point of asking them how they heard about it. And everybody is told to go watch it by a friend. He doesn't talk to people that are like, oh, I saw it on a shelf and I picked it up. Oh, I was clicking through and I stopped and watched it. 99% of people are referred to this film. It has such good legs because of that. And the concept and the art and the execution is great. Do you want to talk about like how different it is from the book? Like how it differs?
I mean, it's miles away. Like you have two character names that transfer from one book to the next. And yes, there is an Iron Giant. Yeah. But like there's the way he interacts with the society, that village, the way that the challenges he faces from like government, none of that is really in the book at all. Certainly there's no giant dragon coming out of a sun or coming out of a star and burning itself in the sun. Like none of this happens. And it's just fascinating to see them transform that source material, which was it's a children's book, kind of folklore in it, how it presents itself, into something really just like touching and about, like you said, choosing your own path of what you want to become. Well, you didn't say that. Choosing not to be a gun. And then also just that story of self-sacrifice that I think is really appealing in our... I love that type of story, raised on that type of story, where you give so much of yourself to others. And the Iron Giant's the epitome of that. Whereas before he was just like kind of a trickster. Yeah.
And I think that to that point, it's worth talking about. The opening is the Iron Giant falling from space. No idea where, no idea why, no idea how. He lands in the ocean and kind of makes his way on shore and is slowly just eating stuff around the periphery. And the crazy old drunk guy sees him and is like, yeah, I saw him. He was out there. And the cool jazz guy, Dean, is like, sees the old guy being made. Yep. Who's Harry Connick Jr. Sees the old guy being made fun of. Is like, hey, I saw him too. Trying to take the heat off. And all the other guys like, see, only weirdos saw it. they riff on it.
No good deed goes unpunished.
No good deed goes unpunished. And that's a great scene. Like the opening scene in the diner introduces everybody super well. Hogarth shows up with a squirrel in a box and he wants to keep it as a pet. His mom is working there and is just complaining about how a guy doesn't want mayonnaise and mustard on his thing. Might as well hold the flavor while you're at it. And then Dean's in there trying to defend the guy. Yep. And then the squirrel goes up Dean's pants. And there's this great, like, cool guy moment where he stands with his back to the camera and goes, I'd like to apologize, everyone, for what I'm about to do. And you hear zip, and the squirrel jumps right up the front of his pants.
It went right for the nuts, you know. It's like
oh, man, absolutely. Like, it's such a concise, well-structured scene of introduction. Even if Brad Bird only wrote that part, it's so well crafted. Like, that's the thing about this whole film is it's very well crafted. So then Hogarth goes off. He finds the giant, makes friends with him pretty quick, and then starts like teaching him how to talk a little bit and introduces him to like stuff. And then when the giant's hungry, he takes him to Dean's So Dean is the guy that runs the junkyard, but also makes art out of the junk. So he's like a cool, hip iron artisan, but maybe he's a junkyard dude. Like it's hilarious. But
he's a mixing of like archetypes in a way that's really fun.
Yeah.
And that character does not exist in the book.
No,
it is
not
purely a creation.
Yeah.
Of Brad. Like that's really, and I love that character so much.
Well, I'd argue too that this giant is more a creation of Brad than Ted, because it's a totally different giant. Where the original giant just kind of bumbles around and has a baseline hunger, kind of makes friends with the kid, and then plays the brain game with the bat angel dragon thing. The Iron Giant in the film is almost like a naive puppy or a child who wants to please Hogarth, understands their friends. Because Hogarth saves him right off the bat. Like the Iron Giant tries to eat the power lines, and Hogarth flips the on-off switch. And they do a lot without saying this stuff. Like the giant brings the on-off switch and drops it near Hogarth, and Hogarth has to figure out why he did that. And it's excellent craftsmanship.
It really is. Like, as a writer, I was just so impressed with how they did the introductions of the characters, how natural it all felt. And even, especially with Hogarth's character, he's like bringing the squirrel into the diner that eventually goes after Dean because he wants a pet. Yeah. Because he is the son of a working mom, single parent who's lonely and getting teased at school. Yeah. And smart kid. He gets like up a grade and stuff, but it doesn't fit in with his classmates. He doesn't have any friend. So when he goes, and he's brave. Like as a kid, if something's stomping around in the woods at night, I'm not going to go check that out. But no, Hogarth is like, I'm on this. Like, let's go see what it is. Super
smart reveal too. Do you remember when we find out that he got skipped a grade?
I think that was when they were talking to Dean, right?
He's at Dean's after he's brought the Iron Giant there, and Dean's about to have coffee. He's like, "You want anything? You want milk?" And Hogarth's like, "No, I want coffee. I'm hip." He's like, "Are you sure this is espresso?" He goes, "Yeah, I told you, I'm hip." And then he has one cup, and he's just blah, 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 blah.
It's like stimulated. Yeah. How can I be stimulated? He's like, "Oh, I think you are."
Yeah, it's a really smart, again, demonstration of character. It shows a lot about Dean. It shows a lot about Hogarth. And it gives you this moment that's comedic, but gives you an opportunity to dump exposition and character in a super funny way.
It's beautiful writing. Like, and it feels so natural. You don't notice it because it's just through there. Yeah.
And so at the same time this is all happening, there's a guy that shows up in town in a trench coat, and he's got a hat on, and he's called Kent Mansley. And that's the guy who's voiced by Shooter McGavin.
Yes.
Great.
Villain of our story.
Acting. He's there from the government, and he's trying to figure out what everybody saw, right? And he has this super inflated sense of self. So again, to the writing and to Brad Bird's comedic timing, there's a point at which he's walking away from a guy he was interviewing, turns around and his car is there, and he gets into it, and he goes, "Oh," and he jumps out of his car, and then they do a long shot, and half his car is gone because it got bit. And he runs away, and he gets the guy. He's like, my car got bit. And he gets him back there, and the car's just gone.
The Iron Giant just into the woods with it.
Oh, it's
and
great.
Not only that, like they had like the MacGuffin kind of thing where Hogarth had his BB gun in the woods, and it gets stepped on by the Iron Giant, and that's what the guy had given Kent. So, and Kent's just like, I don't care about this. Like, this is clearly a hoax or whatever. And then he drops it into the bite. And it clatters to the ground instead of the car seat.
Which is why he still has it.
Yeah. Yes.
And again, it's so organic because later when he's going around interviewing people, he meets the Hughes family, the mother Annie and the son Hogarth. And he's leaving. He's like, Hogarth, what a stupid name. Who named their kid And he gets his look on his face, looks at the gun, and it was bit off, so it says hog hug. And
hog hug.
and just all these little things to it are just such good writing. Good, clean writing, executed wonderfully.
I'm jealous. I'll be honest.
I want to see what, knowing Brad Bird wrote The Incredibles before this, obviously first draft, before it was Pixar, before it went through several revisions, but a story about a family of superheroes trying to live without using, trying to live with their secret identities. What a great idea. I want to see all of Brad Bird's oeuvre. I want to go back and just have a Brad Bird retro to see all of the bits.
I wonder how much we talked a little bit about like the box office success of this and being marked as a failure. I wonder how much of that came into marketing because, like you said, they were funneling money toward other projects. And you could even draw a parallel here to like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, because I don't think that did well at the box office either. But it did so good in the aftermath, in the VHS sales.
Yeah. It became one of those things you watch at Halloween or between Halloween and Christmas.
Yeah. It found its niche for sure. Yeah. And I'm curious where the Iron Giant's niche is. And if it found it, because I don't know how it did in those post sales after the box office flop.
So I think that's the telling thing about it getting a signature edition is that's the recognition that from the studio, from Warner Brothers, it goes, hey, this wasn't worth much then, but it's worth a lot now. How do we get those dollars? And the answer is to remaster and re-release it. No, I'm like, I agree. It's stupid,
but it's totally practical, but it's also like, capitalism.
That's right. Well, I'll be talking with my friends and whenever somebody goes like, well, why is it that way? And the answer is always either capitalism or racism. Like, those are the two reasons America is the way it is. If you're ever curious, like, this seems odd. The Electoral College, racism. Like, it's just super straightforward. Oh, by the way, this is coming out day before voting. So vote if you go vote. The signature edition, though, was clearly a way to resell it to people that had already seen it, probably already had it on VHS, get a new batch of DVDs out there. Because the DVD came with the original, the signature edition, and like some behind the scenes stuff. So I think that's a tell for, hey, this thing became culty and we don't know how to make money off of it because we can't sell it to Disney to become a part of their park. It doesn't fit. So we put it here.
Although Iron Giant with like the Red Rocket car just spinning around, I would totally do that ride.
So I love that part. And it reminds me every time I see it of growing up, my family had an RV, right? My parents are both teachers. So every summer we pile in the RV, we drive in the middle of nowhere, Utah, redwoods, desert, whatever. But when we drive out into the desert, we'd go find weird stuff in the desert, like things that used to be Air Force testing facilities. And so we found one that has this like 20-foot tower with easily a 2-inch iron cable attached to the top. And the way it'd work is you'd attach a plane to it and the plane would go and it'd go in a circle around the top. And it was just like that scene. And we'd go out and we'd hang on it and try and run and jump and spin around it. But every time I see that centrifugal force game, I go, oh, it's the Air Force got to do that. But it has great joy in that, and it takes great joy in itself. The background in the military in it is very strong too in the Iron Giant movie. Like they very much set it in late 50s, right? So it's no longer the 60s. It's no longer during Vietnam. It's pre-Vietnam, Cold War, clear good guys, clear bad guys, huge buildup of weaponry. And so when Kent Mansley and the Iron Giants spotted some more, they bring the military in. And when they bring the military in, Kent is kind of out of control now. He's not in charge of anything. He's not in charge of the response to the giant. And so they're going around trying to find the Iron Giant.
Yeah. But he's also falsifying information to get them to do what he wants and what he believes is right. And I have a little trouble with Kent's character because I think I wanted just a little bit more from him as to why he is the way he is, because he's so villainous. Yeah. And like how he treats Hogarth and the interrogation protocol like he uses with him, and just the almost like unnecessary amount of destruction he wants to bring upon this Iron Giant. I'm curious about that character's motives a little bit. And maybe there was a scene with Hogarth and him in the restaurant where he kind of tries to like get into his head a little bit, because he's like, you can see he sees enemies everywhere. And gosh, what does he say? He's basically like, everybody wants what we have, so that's why we have to strike first type mentality. And
he's talking about the Cold War, right? That's his. Yeah. I think he's very American in that moment. I'm trying to find it so I can see what he says. Yeah, I think so. There's this thing in psychology called implemental and deliberative mindset. And the way it works is that while you're trying to figure out and make a decision, your brain's pretty open to any possibility. It goes, well, let's think about this and think about this. Maybe this will happen. We need to be aware of these things. Mm-hmm. Once you make a decision, your brain's not good at taking in new information. And so you get in, when you're in implemental mode, the job is to do the thing. And you'll see this a lot when people kind of go, okay, here's the plan, and then get mad when the plan gets deviated from, even if it makes sense. It's like, but that wasn't the plan, right? And so
change is hard.
Yeah. And so I feel like he's got a lot of things that he's never pulled out and unpacked, that he's never examined. And if he did, he'd have like a psychic injury. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, so a lot of problems could have been solved if this guy had just gone to therapy.
Yes, but it's 57, so I don't know about the quality of therapy.
There's a stigma back then.
That's right.
So unfortunately so. I think we've gotten better about mental health, I hope.
Yeah, at that point it was mostly prescribing Xanax to housewives because they were bored.
Quaaludes, sir. It was Quaaludes.
It's Quaaludes, you're correct. Well, I'm just going to stay home and get high. It's funny because we got, 70 years after the Civil War, and it went from opium to Quaaludes. It's still just stay at home and take care of things. Which is interesting because the female lead in this, Annie Hogarth, or Annie Hughes, Hogarth's mother, works, and he has to be at home alone a lot. Like that's why he's able to run around and find the Iron Giant, is his autonomy, which is
and can we talk about her character for a second too? Mm-hmm. Because she's another one that's like not in the books. Mm-mm. Like it's really a creation of Brad and team. I know. I stopped petting her. She's very disgruntled.
That'll make them mad.
I'm intrigued about what inspired her character, especially after you mentioned like the domestic violence that Brad's sister underwent. And if I'm really curious where he got the inspiration for her character, because this is somebody who had to step away from a relationship and raise her children separately, and is a really strong individual. Like she's working like double shifts at the diner to make ends meet. Yeah. She's willing to rent out a room. She's hyper independent. Yeah. And still a very loving mother. Like when Hogarth does go missing that first night, when he goes out to find the giant, she's like immediately on it, driving around the woods trying to find where in the world her kid has gone to.
So do you think that, and this is, I apologize if Mr. Bird, if you're listening, this is all conjecture. Do you think that there's a space here where Brad's reconstructing a different life for his sister if she had gotten out of the bad relationship? Because I can see that as a take.
Purely conjecture? Possibly.
Purely conjecture. Apologies to the Bird family.
Because that's such a hard situation. But I'd like to think that he put this positive role model in there as somebody of a life that you could have. Like, you could get away, you could make it work, and you could still get your kid into a safe space.
Is this a sliding doors situation where this is just a different
about too?
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, is it a sliding doors situation? Gwyneth Paltrow's Other Paths.
Oh,
Sliding Doors. Do you remember Sliding Doors?
No.
It was a Gwyneth Paltrow movie, and it was a different world she would have been in if she didn't make it through the doors when they were closing. And so the movie splits and has just two Gwyneth Paltrow films in one. But maybe this is Annie is, a different path that could have happened if she'd gotten out soon enough, kind of thing. I don't know. I hate to kind of even venture guesses around somebody's trauma in that level. So I'll park that and let you continue.
Yeah. I don't know, but I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, definitely.
And I like that character a lot, and I respect her a lot.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's what Kent is so evil about too, because like he threatens the relationship that, or the home life that she and Hogarth have.
Yeah.
When he interrogates Hogarth to try to find the Iron Giant, he says, like, I will get you taken away from your mom.
Yeah.
If you don't tell me where he is. And that's when Hogarth cracks.
Well, he even insinuates himself in kind of a treacherous manner because they have a room for rent. And so once Kent figures out that Hogarth Hughes is Hog Hug, he rents out the room. And so Hogarth wakes up the next morning and he's there.
Yep.
Like, and Mom's like, we have a boarder. Mr. Kent's going to be in town for a while. He's going to rent the room. And he acts like the shittiest new boyfriend to a mother to Hogarth. Just the condescending.
So yeah. Mom too. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Great villain. But it does let, I don't think Annie gets the depth that she could get, or Kent gets the depth he gets, because it's so much Hogarth and the Giant story. Because even Dean, we don't know why he's an artist. We don't know why he has a junkyard. So there's a lot of stuff there where you could make a Iron Giant TV show. You might be able to. Love that. Even if it's just a 5-parter.
Netflix, Amazon, start the bidding war. Let's see who gets it out first.
But then you could really develop that stuff. I think it'd be even interesting to do it as a live action, because you could still have the Iron Giant as a CG creation. But I think that because it's such a focus on Hogarth and the Giant, everything else has to kind of service their story, which kind of deflates them a little bit. But even in that, there's such compelling characters between the way they're acted and how quick everything is. It's really tight. Like, it's a tight, it's not even 90 minutes. It's like hour 10, hour 20. It's a fast movie. So it's,
and honestly, like, I forgive those immediately because of the movie's quality. Like, and maybe I could have gotten a little bit more from those characters, but I have enough for what this movie is delivering.
Yeah. And it has, and that heart that comes through, I think it comes through too, because of how much the humor in it is small town humor and basic childish humor, but so well executed on timing. And sometimes it's not even read as a joke. It's just done. The old guys bring a tractor to Dean. Like, we need to sell the tractor. And Dean's like, well, I'll give you as much as I can for it, but I can't give you much. There's a giant bite out of it. And the old man goes, well, that's why I'm selling it. It's got a giant bite out of it.
No kidding. Then, I've had that conversation.
Yeah. And then Hogarth is the Iron Giant falls apart because it gets hit by a train. And that's when the army really comes in. But when it gets hit by a train, Hogarth watches it and it kind of reassembles itself. And
oh gosh, the hand in the house.
Yeah, he's there with Kent when Kent's first interrogating him and his mother. And the hand of the Iron Giant is walking around the house watching TV that's upstairs in the bathroom, playing with the toilet paper, just unrolling it. And when Hogarth opens the door to yell at it, it wags its tail like it's a dog, like it wags its wrist.
that hand had so much personality.
That hand had so much personality. And so Hogarth is trying to push the hand out the window and making all these noises. And so Annie and Kent come upstairs to see what he's doing. And he's making all these noises that are bathroom noises. And Kent even has a line. He goes, "Oh, that's what happens when you don't chew your food." And it's just all this stuff where it's just so well executed on comic timing. And I think that really is this. I'd put this in the pre-Pixar batch of movies like this, Brave Little Toaster. There's a couple of others that are very much made by people where you can see the sentimentality and the engagement with it that becomes Pixar's real brand. That comic sensibility though is super well executed. And the cannonball scene you mentioned is one that's a huge call out for that to me. They're at a lake and Hogarth runs and does a cannonball off a rock, and Dean is being cool and sitting on the edge and he doesn't want to go in. And the Iron Giant's standing like at the edge of the woods. And after Hogarth jumps in, he's clearly cold. He's going, "I'm freezing, I'm shivering." And he's like, "Nobody wants to come in. It's so refreshing." And the Iron Giant turns and walks away. And then just a split second later here, doom, 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 doom. And the Iron Giant launches in the air, lands in the water, and this giant pillar of water goes up. The water goes out the sides. They have a shot of the road, and the road getting fully like 4 feet underwater. Dean goes by in his deck chair with his eyes huge.
Still holding his newspaper,
Still holding his newspaper. And that cannonball scene was put together by a guy named Michael Gagney. And Michael Gagney was a special effects animator who was kind of didn't want to do the supervisory part anymore. So he said, "I'll only do this film if I just have to come in, do keyframes, hand them off, and I can leave." Like, sure. So he did, and he has this story about that sequence. He says, "I originally animated the first part of the cannonball with a rising pillar of water shooting up in the air. Brad looked at the pencil test and told me to take 8 drawings out where the water pillar rises, essentially popping this enormous amount of water a mile high in 0 time. To me, that didn't make any sense. It was against the laws of momentum and physics. In the end, of course, I had to concede, so I took out 4 drawings instead of 8, thinking this was a fair compromise. At the next screening of the reels, I saw that 8 drawings had been taken out, 4 more than what I had planned. Surely Brad's doing. To my amazement, it worked great. Brad had retimed the effects to fit his vision. From my vantage point, I saw the scene I was animating in a sort of tunnel vision. Brad saw the overall scope of the sequence. He wasn't afraid to bend the laws of nature to fit his will in order to achieve the desired effect."
And it's one of those scenes. It's one of those scenes that stays with you because it's just so joyful and fun. And honestly, I think they used it in the trailers. I remember as a kid seeing that and just being, and Dean's face as the wall of water comes toward him, and he's just like trying to hide from it.
Hiding behind a magazine. Yeah. But I'm floored by Brad's ability to engage in that way, which is what I really think is so cool about how he did this and how he directed The Incredibles. Like his skill is up there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to go back into what military's doing now.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, it's no wonder that the word of mouth still spreads on this.
Yeah.
Like I went to a robotics lab not too long ago, and they had the Iron Giant on the wall of the robotics lab because it's part of us.
Yeah.
It's part of our culture.
If you look in the 3D printing community, there's always models of the Iron Giant in various sizes and shapes that are printable. Yeah. And it's just quality. So after the cannonball, they have the dead deer where Hogarth and the Iron Giant come upon hunters and they've killed a deer. And it's the Iron Giant seeing death and he doesn't understand it. And Hogarth is trying to explain it to him. And I think that is very much Brad talking to almost himself about death, which is just so like, oh God. But yeah, it's
how to explain death to a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or to a gun.
Or to a gun.
Yeah. If guns had sentience and could choose not to shoot.
Yeah. And this is the first time too that we see something different from the Iron Giant. And his eyes kind of go smaller when he's looking at the gun, the rifle that the hunters dropped. And it turns red for a second. And then Hogarth is telling him that it's okay to die. Some things die and it's okay. And he kind of pulls back from that. Yeah. And it's a very big like moment in the development of his arc. Like the Iron Giant's arc is defined by naivete and then awareness.
Yeah. And there was a second line to that too. He's like, it's okay to die. All things die. But it's not okay to kill.
Mm-hmm.
And that is super telling too of what he's trying to like bring across to the giant, how he's trying to raise up his pet.
I know. Yeah.
But, man.
So
it's a good moment, and it's so sobering too after all that joy.
Yeah. So after that is where the first deleted scene in the signature series comes in. It's at 54:27, and Hogarth Hughes has been talking about like what a soul is. He says souls don't die. My mom says they're this thing that goes on forever. And the Iron Giant falls asleep out in the junkyard, and inside Dean is asleep and watching Jack Parr on the old Tonight Show. And the Iron Giant's dream is so strong that it overrides the signal. And so Dean can see the Iron Giant's dream. Super weird, super surreal. But you see this montage of the deer saved me. It came from the sky. And there's all these little things happening. And one of the things you see is like 50 Iron Giants walking together towards fire and war. There's an exploding planet while Hogarth in voiceover says, I guess you're not going to hurt me. And that's like the end of the dream. Mm-hmm. And it's super odd and compelling. I like it, but that's because I've seen the movie. I think it makes sense that they cut it. It doesn't add narratively, but tonally it's in a piece with everything else. So have you seen that? You were nodding.
I did see that scene, and I didn't remember it. So it makes so much sense. And I think because
it wasn't in the original. What
he's trying to do there is add clarity for the scenes that come later of what the giant was at, the history of what this giant probably was supposed to be. Because we haven't said this yet, but the Iron Giant has a dent on his head.
Oh, yeah.
And can't remember things.
Yeah.
And the history of this is essentially has amnesia. And the history kind of hints that, that scene makes it very obvious what he was supposed to be. He was supposed to be a conqueror.
Yeah.
He was supposed to come
Weapon
in,
of war.
clear
He's
out
a
the
gun.
locals. He's a gun. He was designed to be a gun.
Yeah.
An alien gun.
Yeah.
Maybe the dragon /bat /angel sent him.
They became friends. He made more of them, and then he sends them to the other planets before he shows up. It's like, go see if there's Iron Giants. Challenge him to a fire laydown before I get there.
Get Australia ready for me.
Get Australia ready for me. Yeah. So then the next little bit, it kind of switches into the military is pretty sure that they figured out where he is. So the military and Kent Mansley and even Annie are all coming out to the junkyard because they think the Iron Giant's there. And when they get there, Dean has made it look like he made the Iron Giant as a piece of art sculpture. Like he's welded stop signs and do not cross and just crap on him. Yeah, and he's sitting like that in like a Zen posture. That's this great bit.
It's going to go into the lobby of like one of the car companies. Who knows?
And he's telling the military, he's like, I don't think I'm done with it yet. So, if you really want it and the price is right, I guess I'd sell it to you, but I'd really rather finish it. And there's some other bids.
It's such a good switcheroo.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice conceal. And then Kent has lost all credibility. He's super pissed. And Annie and Dean, this is like their second or third meeting, but this is kind of their meet cute where she's walking around and she's like, oh, I the Iron Giant, it looks like some stuff slapped on, but I like this one. And she likes some of his other art.
Yep.
Yeah.
They have that moment of connection. Like you can tell in the first opening scene too, in the diner, he's always been a little sweet on her, but she's just busy. She's at work. And this is the first time she like opens up in a way that's like, she sees him as beyond like that weird dude from the junkyard.
Yeah, very much so. And this sets up a lot for the end of the film, because you now have, everybody's seen it, even if they don't know what it is. The military think Kent is an idiot. Kent is furious at that. Dean and Hogarth now have kind of carte blanche to keep hanging out from Mom. Like, Mom's, okay, you hang out with a weird artist. That's fine. This point, though, too, is where I'm vaguely remembering it, so you might have to help me with this one. But this point is where they're out playing, and Hogarth keeps telling the Iron Giant to be Atomo, and he's going to be the good guy. And Atomo's like a weird iron monster. He's like, I know Atomo. And he makes an S out of scrap and puts it on front. Puts his hand aside. Superman. In that Vin Diesel way.
I can just see Vin Diesel as the Iron Giant now. It's just a giant Vin Diesel.
Right? That'd be great. That'd be perfect. Another character you can play forever. Iron Groot.
Oh my gosh. I am Groot. I am the Iron Giant.
I am Iron Giant. When Hogarth is playing, though, he has a ray gun, and it trips something in the Iron Giant. He goes into like Iron Giant war mode, red eyes, laser beams. Dean and Hogarth are freaked out. The Iron Giant comes out of it and is like embarrassed and runs away, right?
Yeah. Well, Dean kind of yells at him and like, get out of here. Because he almost kills Hogarth.
Oh, yeah. Like
nearly does. And Dean like knocks him out of the way of the ray blast and saves Hogarth's life. And so he's freaking out and telling the Iron Giant to flee. And the Iron Giant does. And then Dean actually is also the one to like look down and see the ray gun and realize he puts one and one together immediately. Like it was a self-defense mechanism. And so they end up chasing after, I think on a motorcycle. It was Hogarth and Dean go after and try and catch up. I think
Hogarth runs off. Dean puts one and one together with the ray gun. And then he pulls up next to him on the motorcycle. He's like, you're not going to get very far on foot. And it's like the reconciliation bit. And in this same amount of time, there's two kids in town who are watching the Iron Giant running. And they're like on the roof with binoculars. And he's running towards the water, but the town is in between him and the water. And the two kids are watching him so intently that they fall off the roof and they're hanging by like the handle of the binoculars. Iron Giant runs in the middle of town, freaking everybody out, sees him. Yep. Big old slide in, catches them and gives them back to the thing. And then we head into like this big standoff with the military.
Yeah. Although I do want to point out, like, the town actually like takes a breath there.
Oh yeah.
And nobody's attacking him. Everyone's just kind of taking him in as somebody that saved these kids. There is a point where they could have gone peaceful, like, and it could have just been this like amazing kind of meeting between this alien Iron Giant and this town. And then the military just starts shooting. Yeah.
There is a, God, what's the name of it? The Monsters of Lake. Hold on, I'm lifting my iPad because I know it's on there. But there's this book, and it's a get out of there. This makes great radio, by the way.
La 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 la.
Everybody loves listening to people look things up on a laptop.
Pay no attention to the man behind the noises.
Right. I have too many books. Seeing this is my own curse. What is that? But it's this story about, why was I rereading that? God, I hate it when I can't find. Oh, here. Okay. Lauren Groff wrote a book called The Monsters of Templeton. And in it, she comes home because she's pregnant with her professor's baby. Her professor's married, so she's dropping out of school, moving back in with her mom. All the conflicts come back up. And at the same time, a monster dies in the lake. And it's a monster that everybody knew was there. It's not treated as something strange. And all the scientists and people come to test it and see what it was. But it's taken as given that the monster was always there. And I was thinking about that when they have that moment where you're spot on with the town kind of goes, not a monster. And it's that kind of thing where it's just another thing that's part of our town. And it's a well orchestrated turn too, to kind of cultivate that in. Do you want to talk through
do it in such a short amount of time and just
fast.
have it be in the action? Like it goes back to good writing. Damn
Such
him.
good writing. Such good writing. Do you want to go through the final like conflict and how that plays off?
Sure. So right before the military starts shooting, Hogarth actually and Dean pull up on the motorcycle, and the Iron Giant like brings Hogarth up on his hand, and he's like showing he's peaceful, showing he's like not going to hurt anybody. And then of course the military starts shooting, and so they flee. And Dean tries to warn them. He goes to Kent, and it's like, he's got a kid. Like, don't shoot. Like, he's peaceful. Your guns are triggering him. He tells this guy everything he needs to know to stop this from escalating. God, and of course, Kent is like, oh yeah, I'll take care of it. And goes over to the general, this 3-star general, and is like, you know, that guy just said he killed a kid. We really got to take it out. And it's like, why? Why are you so bloodthirsty?
Such a shit. He's not a good dude.
I hate him. And I love to hate him. And that's great.
Yeah.
But so they flee, and you have a really cool sequence of them fleeing, I think, off a cliff at one point. They get knocked off a cliff by some artillery or something. And the Iron Giant discovers he can fly. Yeah. So he like literally Iron Man at that point into the sky. And they have a sequence where they're like out racing these fighter jets. Actually,
well, it has that great moment right before that where he's like kind of sloppy in the air, and Hogarth is like, you have to kind of put your arms out like Superman. And he assumes the Superman pose, and he's like stable, and it's great. It's the part of the movie where after everything you've been through, that's like the first part where you start to swell, and like the joy. It's like, oh, they're gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm. It's so cool. And I have to say, even like the fighting sequence between them and the jets, because he's just trying to run away. He's not attacking back. He's purely defensively protecting Hogarth and himself. But I'm pretty sure they did that same exact like movement in Iron Man in the first movie, where he like pauses and lets the planes go in front. Like it's cool to see that. And I wonder if it was, I'd have to look at the scenes side by side, but I wonder if it was an homage. But maybe somebody else on the internet go look that up.
That's an homage. That'd be cool.
Please. Or don't.
I mean, they didn't get a call of the Iron Man because it was of Iron Man, but man, Iron Giant feels like such a better name anyway, especially for this.
Name. It's a good name.
So then they're flying. Yeah. Go ahead.
So they get knocked out of the sky, and when they get knocked out of the sky, the Iron Giant like goes sprawling and lands in kind of a pile, and you don't see Hogarth initially until the Iron Giant wakes up and turns over, and he sees Hogarth. And it's a flashback moment to the moment with the deer, because when the deer gets shot and the Iron Giant sees it, he tries to revive it. He tries to like poke it and see like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, wake up. And the deer, of course, doesn't move. And it's the same thing with Hogarth. And Hogarth doesn't move. and he thinks Hogarth is dead. And at that point, he's in crisis, and he's still getting shot at by the military, and he loses himself.
Yeah.
And he becomes the gun. He becomes what he was meant to be by whatever force sent him.
No, I think he chooses.
I think it's a choice.
Because if Brad Bird's thing is, what if you're a gun and don't want to be a gun? Then this is the one time in the movie, as opposed to earlier when the ray gun triggers him. I think this is the one time in the movie where he goes, oh, well, hell, if you're taking my friend, I'm going to be the gun.
Yeah.
I do think that it's a choice at that point for him to flip, because he doesn't flip in response to the shot. He flips in response to the death. So that's my read on it.
Getting shot up all over left and right. I took it as like the thing that was tethering him to his conscious and his identity was Hogarth. And once that 100%. Piece got removed, that's how I took it, but it could very well have been a choice. Because screw those guys.
Screw those guys indeed. So then he goes full ballistic.
Oh yeah. And by the way, the weaponry on that guy, so cool.
So cool. He goes from looking like a 1950s cobbled together robot to something out of War of the Worlds plus maybe even Wild Wild West, because he has a thing that spins around.
He's not a giant spider, sir.
No. It spins around though, and it has little things that tap on it to shoot it.
It's got like the 3 tentacles that come out the back and are firing styles of weaponry.
Big chest beam.
Oh, yeah.
And then
take out a battleship.
Yeah, and then he fires that off the horizon giant blast. And I don't know what that is. What did you think that was something nuclear, or do you think it was something like just bizarre weaponry?
I'm going to go in bizarre alien weaponry because it didn't have the mushroom cloud effect. So, and it was more like, so when he fired the weapon at the tank, it starts as a small ball when it fires the weapon at the tank. And then it engulfs the tank. And of course, because it's a kid show, all the humans jump out and run away before it engulfs the tank. And then it zaps it out of existence. It levitates and it's gone. So I think that's what it was going to do to the battleship, just at a larger scale. I could be wrong because you, of course, never see how that weapon would have worked. But cool weaponry. Cool weaponry.
Yeah, and that's the point at which Hogarth is back. So Hogarth's not dead.
Nah. Dean and his mom find him, and they're like, oh, he's just unconscious. And you're like, well, why didn't anybody tell the Iron Giant that? But they revive him in the car, and Hogarth's first thing is we got to go back. We got to go help him. And they do. They I think they get stopped at the town. And Kent and the general are going back and forth on
they're stopped. Yeah, they're stopped at the edge of town by the guards, and the guards are fighting him and going, "We have to get back. We have to get back. There's a kid in there." And the guard goes, "There's a kid in there." And he looks in the car, and Hogarth is gone. Hogarth has gotten past everybody, and he's
running toward the Iron Giant, who's just lasering everything.
Yep. And at the same time, the Kent general thing is going on.
Yeah, where they're trying to figure out how to stop the giant, and they're about to nuke it because they don't know what to do. And they're like, well, we got to lure it away from town first, and then we can try.
But they have a sub with a nuke on the line ready to go.
Casual nuke.
You don't presidents, 4-star generals. We got this. So they're piping hot nuke ready to go. And Hogarth gets down there and gets the Iron Giant back to being not War Machine, but Iron Man. And and at that point, the general's not going to launch the nuke, and Kent is arguing with him about it and takes the phone away from him and says, just launch it, launch the nuke, do it now. So Kent, they do. It's so crazy that Kent launched the nuke. Yeah, and then the general turns to him and is like, it's on where he is. Where do you think the Iron Giant is right now? It's like, it's behind you. And then we have like the best moment for the giant. I'll let you talk about it because I talk a lot. So
no, it's okay. I love this scene so much.
It's so good.
But yeah, they everyone kind of has this realization. Kent has the realization, tries to flee, and the general's like, and the Iron Giant stops him with a hand. And the general's like, well, you're here with the rest of us, so you might as well be a good soldier and wait. And everyone's like, some people are like, oh, do we go to a shelter? And Dean kind of is talking to the mom, and he's like, it's not going to matter. And Hogarth and the Iron Giant kind of have a moment where they are looking at each other, and he's like, what's going on? The Iron Giant's like trying to figure out things. And Hogarth points at the weapon and he's like, when that comes down, we're all going to die. And there's nothing we can do about it. And it's incredibly sobering because you can't. You're just kind of stuck. And the Iron Giant kind of looks at them and he looks at the town and he takes in like this moment, and you can see the choice being made. And he looks up at the sky and he Superman's his way up there. And you get this scene where they're in the upper, actually, I think they're in space at this point, and the missile is starting to turn around and the Iron Giant's rising up to meet it in his Superman posture.
Yeah.
And he closes his eyes as the missile's starting to come down, and he's like, I'm Superman. And he meets it, and it explodes well above, outside of the atmosphere, and protects the town. He's literally sacrificing himself to protect his new friend and the people that were shooting at him like minutes ago.
And if you can watch that scene and not have a quiver of your lip or a wetting of the eye, you, my friend, are in need of a soul. It is such, after everything we've been through, that moment is so sacrificial.
You're tearing up over there. Oh, man. Don't do that.
No, it kicks so hard. You know why? Because that scene slaps. It is so good. After all of that, and the timing on it, again, Brad Bird's direction, Brad Bird's writing on this. The missile is up, and you watch it at the peak, at its zenith, or azimuth. It tips over, starts to come down, and clip away to the Iron Giant. And just the eyes closing, the giving in is just so, now there's a Christ. Let's bring him back. Let's do the Iron Giant Bible. I'm down. Acolytes of Dean.
Acolytes of Dean.
We're here for the hog hug. Every December 25th, we do the hog hug. It's one of those movies and one of those stories, I think, that has such a pure message and executes and delivers it so well. If you're listening to this and be like, well, I didn't think anything was wrong. There's not critiquing it. You can go critique it. There's very little in this film that I don't enjoy. I think that the animation is phenomenal. They do line work where they do color matching lines where, like, if their face is orange, the lines around the edge of the face are like a darker orange. It's not a black line. They animated the Iron Giant entirely in Maya and RenderMan, so it's a CG Iron Giant. Like, this is early computer animation, and it's done extremely well, especially when you consider that they're panning up and panning down. It's so big, and the backgrounds are hand drawn. And so to combine those two, the skill is phenomenal. The execution is phenomenal. And so when you ride that whole ride and get to this part, I don't know how you don't react to it personally. Yeah.
And I think that's the moment that has captured people. That's the moment. That's why people are still talking about this movie. Yeah. And why we still care is because it's such a pure moment, and it's such an obvious choice, but also such a hard one. Like, he could have fled. He could have been like, this place doesn't want me. I'll just take Hogarth, maybe his mom and Dean, and leave. And he could have like screwed over everybody else. But he chooses not just to save the people that matter to him. He chooses to save everyone that wronged him seconds ago.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's what an amazing character, and what a massive change from I'll bet I can outlast you on a fiery bed.
I'm going to burn my bottom hair. You burn your bottom on the sun. I'll see you later, dragon angel bat slave.
No contest. There's a reason we don't talk about the book all that much.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we have spent like over an hour just taking in this piece, because it is so well crafted. And
So dialing back to one thing that's so important for this, the final coda post explosion, is when the Iron Giant was hit by the train and he was in pieces all over the place and was reassembling, Hogarth was following the hand back to the barn where the giant was. And when he gets there and he opens the door, there's this screw that keeps bumping against his foot. And he lifts his foot and the screw goes up, and it's for the jaw, and it goes on one side of the jaw. And that plays, that kernel that they feed to you about 35 minutes into the film feeds into the post-explosion coda. So genius. So after the explosion, Dean and everybody are kind of like packing up, putting away all that. And Dean walks over and he's like, hey, I this fell from the sky. I thought you might want it. And it's that screw. It's that screw that was trying to get past his foot.
I think it is a time skip, though. I think it's a time skip between when they find it.
Yeah, I don't remember if the time skip is before they find it or after they find it, but there's definitely a time skip then. Yeah. It's 6 months to a year later, and Dean and Annie are now a thing. Hogarth is playing sports with random kids in the grass.
He's made friends.
And then you're right. I think that's there where the screw comes out and he gives them the screw, is that he found it in the scrapyard or something.
I think it's time skip, but it's still like, it's important.
Yeah, it's important because then the last 30 seconds of the film is Hogarth's asleep and he hears the noise that he heard when he first found the Iron Giant, the little beep, 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 beep. And the screw is tinking against the window and he gets this giant grin on his face and he opens the window and lets the screw out. And then the next shot is like the Arctic and it's one leg of the Iron Giant hopping through the snow.
And like a nub of the arm, like making its way, chicken winging its way.
Yep. Yeah. And so it has this great coda where it goes in a Jesus-y way. He was reborn.
He comes back.
Again. The Book of the Iron Giant.
The Book of the Iron Giant. Oh, man.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Dean. Let's do this.
I want it. I want more content in this.
Right? So I think what you're hearing from both of us is that if you haven't seen this thing, I don't know what you're waiting for. If you've seen it, go watch it again. Go read up on this director. Go read up on the writer, same guy, Brad Bird. Go read up on the Michael Gagney, who did the special effects. Go read up on the Michael Kamen, who did the music. And then watch it again. This is a good movie. Better than the book, I think.
I'm gonna lean slightly better than the book. We'll just put it in that category.
Yeah.
No, it blew it out of the water. It fired an alien weapon meant to destroy a battleship at the book.
And hit. It hit.
And hit. Don't know what happened, but stunning adaptation.
It was great. I think through it and at again an hour 10, an hour 20. I think it's an hour 15 is the signature, hour 12 is the non-signature. So it doesn't even add that much.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what was the second scene? I'm trying to remember because you said there were two scenes.
Oh, yeah.
It was the school one and
the Giant's Dream, and then Annie and Dean in the diner before the tractor with the bite in it. It's super short. Yeah, it's just more of them. It's more of their meet cute kind of stuff. It's like maybe just 4 lines each. Yeah. Yeah. And they're talking about Hogarth, but they're not talking about Hogarth, you know?
Yeah. We all know. We all like a little bit of romance subplots.
We know they're not talking about Hogarth. They might be talking about hugging the hog, though, you know.
They're gonna go hog later, I guess.
Yeah, that's a strange, it's a strange euphemism. But it's. I think it's a really good like early family movie too. Like if you've got a 5-year-old and like a 7 to 15-year-old, and then the two of you have grandma over, and it's a good after dinner sit down and enjoy movie too. It's one of those. I don't know how much they make them anymore, but like the movies that you can just sit with everybody and watch, and there's never anything anybody's uncomfortable with. Like it doesn't dive into that. For that, it's really good too.
Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I really can't. Yeah. It's just superb writing, great characters, as you mentioned, excellent score. Never bothered me, and like I guess. This isn't something we talked about, but there's a real amazing like quality to be able to capture like that childhood magic moments, like those moments where like they're spinning around in the car, they're playing with the ray guns, like those playful bits where it's like just kids being kids type thing. I think that tickles some nostalgia in us that we've all wanted that, like, and to see it and to be reminded of it is always just a joy.
There's a moment where he's home alone and his mom calls and like, hey, I'm taking a double. You know, there's chicken in the fridge. You can have that. No junk food, no scary movies. Go to bed on time. And it cuts away to him. Oh, I've got it, Mom. And he opens the bread box and there's Twinkies in there. And then he's filling the Twinkies with whipped cream from a can.
Brilliant.
And watching a scary movie. This scary movie is great. Oh, there's two insert movie things in here that I think are brilliant. One is the movie insert. It's a doctor and his lab assistant nurse who's very much Animaniacs Hello Nurse style nurse. And they have a brain in a jar and it falls down and then it crawls away. And Hogarth is watching. He's like, oh, you're going to get it. And it's a great little like
shoveling food in his mouth.
It's a great little 1950s making fun of those old movies. The other one is when Hogarth is in school and he's drawing pictures of the Iron Giant and kind of ignoring what's happening. And they're having a duck and cover movie play. And the duck and cover movie is sending up how ludicrous it was to think that covering your head and getting under your desk was going to save you from an atomic blast, to the point where they have a girl cover her head. It's all animated. Cover her head, get under the desk. The nuke hits right on top of her desk, and it blows out the dirt underneath her desk. And she's in there. She's safe. And she and the desk are fine. I don't know what they're making them out of, but whew.
I mean, I want that desk.
Yeah. And the animation style in it's super weird. It looks like Ren and Stimpy, like Crick Falusi.
Yeah.
I don't like saying his name because he's kind of a problematic person, but it does look like that kind of animation and that kind of weirdness. But it's great to watch because I remember those drills. My dad remembers them. They were on forever. And you're like, what? This isn't. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we both recommend it. I think if we continue on in this, we're now longer than the film is. So if you've listened to this whole thing, and you haven't watched the movie, that's on you. The little bits I edited out because I was looking at my iPad or couldn't find something may bring it down, but this recording has now surpassed the length of the Iron Giant. So there is more to say that can't be said, but we're not going to wear out this welcome. Briar, you want to go ahead and plug your pluggables and tell them where your Kickstarter is? We'll have a link in the show notes and comments. So
absolutely. So just a reminder, I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. I have a debut novel called Gambling on Common Sense about a common sense officer on a spaceship that's coming out for Kickstarter on October 10th. So by the time this airs, you should be able to get your special editions, limited merch, and all that fun stuff. So if you like laughing about fun situations in space and romantic subplots, come check me out at Instagram. It's at Laughing Briar, or you can look my website up is laughingbriarbooks.com.
Perfect. And you already found me, so I'm not going to belabor that point. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you with the next book, which it's one of 3, depending on who finishes reading first. So we'll find out who that is soon. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.